fast can stock market sentiment change in an instant? Just ask NVIDIA investors. Nearly $600 billion in market value wiped out overnight. No warning, no second chances. Noble Gold Investments is alerting all clients, diversify now. Market crashes don't wait, so be protected and prepared. For nearly a decade, my friends at Noble Gold Investments have helped thousands protect their wealth with gold IRAs and physical gold. With over $2 billion in precious metal sales, Noble Gold is the trusted choice for Americans serious about financial security. And now when you open a qualified account, you'll receive 2 5-ounce silver America the Beautiful coins free. Visit noblegoldinvestments.com today. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. Don't just grow your wealth, guard it. Hey, Inspire Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. It's John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is Thursday, February 20th, 2025. Out of the Matrix into Prime Reality. Thank you for joining us on X, Rumble, and YouTube. I actually can't believe it's February 20th. Time is racing. By the way, that will be a future show where we will explore why time feels so accelerated, whether time is actually accelerating itself, and what that could possibly mean in a big context of things. Quick announcement before we jump into today's subject. I will address your comments, your thoughts, your criticism about our most recent series where we talked with AI and shared this with you at the end of this show. So please stick around. I want to explain a few things that I think will clarify where we stand on this. Okay, today's journey. It's the Trump hero journey. And what we want to do, listen, I get questions every single day, and we get questions. What do we think about what's happening? What do we think about Doge? What do we think about Trump and Elon Musk and RFK and Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel and all the people that are in the media and the rapid, extremely fast-paced developments in this nation and abroad? And I'm a researcher. We are systems people, both Christine and I, which means we observe patterns, systems, things that show a complete picture. It was short-sighted of people to judge the Trump and the movement based on snippets. And the same thing is happening now. People are judging it based on snippets on both sides, those who love it, those who hate it. And I don't think that's the right approach. I think you would lose sight. And so what we love to do is take a broader perspective. So let's look at one of the overarching storytelling methods since time immemorial that was succinctly identified by Joseph Campbell, and he called it the hero's journey. Let me give you a little bit of an overview of what that means, and then we'll go into the context of Donald Trump and look at it, right? So Joseph Campbell was an American professor, writer, and mythologist best known for his work on comparative mythology and religion. His most famous book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, introduced the concept of the hero's journey, the monomyth, a universal narrative pattern found in myths, religious stories, and modern storytelling. Campbell studied myths from various cultures and concluded that they all follow a similar structure, reflecting deep psychological and spiritual truths about human life. His ideas have been used both to inspire personal growth and to manipulate narratives, as a hero's journey structure can be applied to political figures, corporate branding, and controlled opposition movements. Okay, let me pause right here. So for anyone who has ever started a company and gone to a marketing agency, for anyone who's ever visited a coach, a mentor, been deeper into the personal development world, for anyone who's ever wanted to produce a documentary, a movie, a screenplay, through various fields, or if you've been in the political arena, then you will know that this hero's journey is often introduced to you as a concept. In branding, marketing, that comes up all the time. If you're a personal brand and you want to create yourself as such, the hero's journey is the thread that is often applied to the, to the brand guide, if you will. So this is not a new theme. However, you can use the hero's journey to grow personally and to, to apply it to your life and your personal growth steps. You can use the hero's journey to tell a story about your brand, about your mission, about your charity, your nonprofit, whatever. You can use the hero's journey, and they do every single time, to brand a politician. The question is, how is the hero's journey being used? Truthful, authentic, deceptive? And this is what we want to explore today. Before we go any deeper into this, I would like to show you a very short clip that I think opens our minds just a little bit as to how we're going to look at this, from a 60 minutes segment from December of last year, so just a few short months ago. Let's look at this and just take it into our observation today.
To buy this.
Well, obviously, they didn't know that they were buying it from Israel.
Who did they buy it from, or think they were buying it from?
We have an incredible array of possibilities of creating foreign companies that have no way being traced back to Israel, shell companies over shell companies who affect the supply chain to our favor. We create a pretend world. We are a global production company. We write the screenplay. We're the directors, we're the producers, we're the main actors. The world is our stage.
So the reason why I wanted to play this clip is because not necessarily just to point to Israel, but because of the sentiment of production, the sentiment of staging, the sentiment of producing, right? Producing a pretend world, like the guy said. So when we look at what we're going to look at right now, we have to take into account that what we see is always a production. What we see in the political world, what we see in the financial world, what we see in economics and science, as soon as it hits the people in terms of there's a press conference, there is a policy, there is a forum, there is a whatever, it is a production. And I don't mean this in a symbolical way. It's not necessarily always a hidden production, but there is an agenda, there is a timetable, there are scripts, teleprompters, and all of it is a psychological production to achieve a certain outcome every single time. Now that we have to take into account. So let's dive deeper into the hero's journey to see how this might apply here. The hero's journey is a timeless storytelling structure where an ordinary person is called to adventure, faces trials, and emerges transformed. It begins in the ordinary world where the hero receives a call to adventure but initially refuses out of fear or doubt. A mentor appears, guiding them past the threshold into the unknown. There, they encounter tests, allies, and enemies, culminating in a life-altering ordeal where they face their greatest fear or challenge. Upon surviving, they claim a reward and begin the road back, often encountering a final test, the resurrection, proving their transformation. Finally, they return home, bringing newfound wisdom or power, the elixir, which benefits their world. This cycle reflects human struggles and growth, making it a powerful tool in storytelling, mythology, and even persuasion. Now, you can compare that to any, of your favorite books, favorite movies, favorite screenplays, and you'll see that fundamentally this way of storytelling is always used, because we are deeply psychologically connected to it. And so that's why people root for the underdog in any race, right? They don't root for the obvious favorite. They root for the one who's less likely to win, the one who maybe they can relate to better. All righty. So here's the hero's journey template. And it can and often is being weaponized to deceive people by exploiting its psychological impact and emotional engagement. And this is where I wanted to show you how this extremely powerful way of storytelling has been used over and over and over again in politics in a deceptive way, because we fundamentally psychologically connect to these themes. Manufacturing a false crisis, that's the call to adventure. A deceptive narrative often starts with a contrived, exaggerated, or misrepresented problem, making people believe they're in urgent danger, economic collapse, climate disaster, so and so. The crisis must be big enough to require a heroic figure or movement to save people. Then you're creating a controlled, reluctant hero. A false hero is introduced, someone who at first resists the role, making them seem relatable and humble. This can be a political leader, activist, or celebrity, carefully positioned as one of the people who was reluctantly pushed into the role by public demand. And now, while we do this, I want to compare this, because this is fundamentally about looking at Trump's journey that began many decades ago, of course, but in the political arena as a serious contender, it began in 2015. Many people have asked Donald Trump over the years and decades, will you run for president? Many people have even said you should run for president, which is sort of we want you to. Wouldn't it be good? You're always commenting on politics, right? This was a carefully curated perception. And so eventually, and this was also how it was presented to the public in 2015, he decided to run because he was asked. He was asked to run. And he said, I have a good life. I have a good company. I don't need to do this, but somebody's got to save America. So, we have this template of the hero's journey clearly fulfilled. And I'm not jumping to any conclusions. I'm just drawing the parallels here, which I think, is quite important. Introducing a wise mentor, manufactured authority. The mentor figure can be a controlled expert, media, or institution that appears wise, but actually pushes the deception. So in Trump's case, you had a sort of maybe the Tea Party people, the libertarian-minded people, the smaller government people, but you had those big voices in the right-wing media that really started to align with Trump quickly. Someone like Rush Limbaugh, who was a huge voice in that field. Bill O'Reilly, maybe at the time, those figures rallied around Trump pretty quickly and sort of supported him. And also oftentimes, they insinuated that they were in touch with Trump, that they were talking to him, that they were advising him. I mean, you take that side, and then you take, of course, the military side, which he has said from the beginning that the military or a good section of the military, of the upper brass, is supporting him, pushing him, called him. So, that sort of plays into the story. Their role is to legitimize the hero and reinforce the narrative. Okay. And, that definitely was fulfilled in the story. Then you have the enemy, the dark force. To unite people, a scapegoat or villain must be presented. And don't get me wrong, there's enough scapegoats or villains out there to choose from. You don't have to create one. There's enough cabal, dark force, real darkness out there. But the way that this works is a political opponent, like a radical movement, needs to be identified, right? A concept like misinformation, or sometimes domestic extremism, disobedience to authority, or in this case, it was, lawlessness, against police, defund the police, all these things. You need to really identify and clearly label the opponent to make this work. A shadowy force, a secret cabal, often used to create false opposition and mislead truth seekers. So in the hero's journey, it is important that the hero faces clear and defined obstacles and opponents. So the audience, the people that are watching the story, can begin to clearly distinguish and choose sides. If you don't have that defined clearly, it's hard to choose a side. It's hard to jump on board with anyone. The illusion of struggle. trials and tests. The hero faces opposition, but it's orchestrated and controlled. Nothing, never ever before I believe in presidential history, because we didn't have the mass media before, but certainly nothing we can remember comes even close to the vilification of Trump as soon as he started announcing the anything from to the left of mainstream media, and even right-leaning outlets tried to vilify him. I remember Fox, for example, in the earlier days did this, as a sort of a strategy. And so you had the media apparatus, I mean, just relentless vilification and relentless pushback every single day. That is part of the hero's journey. That is, and if you will, if you look at it from the standpoint of potential controllers in the background, you want that. People always think they don't want that. They do want that. There is no such thing as bad publicity. If your name is being mentioned thousands of times every single day across every screen, every newspaper, every social media outlet, then you're celebrating, because you're living rent free in people's heads, and that is part of the strategy. And he's often said that. He's often said there's no such thing as bad press. I'm out there. Events are often staged, exaggerated, or manipulated to make the hero struggle look real. Controlled opposition, scripted debates, false flags. This keeps the audience emotionally involved. And let me tell you this. In the Trump story, you had the media. You had the smear campaigns, which at that point, he was successful by calling everything fake news. Not that I oppose that term. They are fake news, but it also meant that even when true stories came out, they could legitimately deny those stories about him because everything is fake news. Then you had during his presidency, you had 2 impeachment trials. And after his first presidency, you had the lawfare where they threw everything they possibly could at him, right? So these are all stages of the hero's journey. Let's look a little further here. The big victory that isn't real. The hero appears to overcome the enemy and achieve victory. The victory is often a false solution, one that advances the controller's true goals. Example, a revolution that leads to more centralized power than freedom. And I wouldn't look at the first presidency as the real victory. I would look at this second term as the real victory that maybe isn't real. And, we're going to look at how the hero's journey can be interpreted. But let's look at this revolution that is currently unfolding. A revolution that leads to more centralized power rather than freedom. Is that true? It would appear that with the current strategy in place, if you are a more independent or neutral observer, that fundamentally the ship is still, or more than ever, moving in a certain direction. I have said this before. I don't look at this direction as being ideological from a term of left, right, Republican, Democrat. That doesn't even exist. Those are all vessels created to box people in. There is no such thing as a true Republican Party and true Democrat Party. They don't exist. There are people within those parties who identify that way, but fundamentally, where it counts and where it matters, it's a uniparty. Fundamentally, the left and the right, wherever it gets to the core of things, they work very united behind the scenes. Most importantly, they are financially controlled by the same forces, always have been. So is the ship moving in a different direction? We are definitely switching systems, and that was known for a long time. But are we switching the direction? I would say that fundamentally, the ship has been pointing towards technocracy. The ship is pointing more than ever towards technocracy. Now, is that what people want? Is that what people have voted for, if you will? Is that what people recognize? I don't know that. But I would say that this huge revolution that is happening, and as much as I absolutely support the dismantling of the bureaucratic state and the power structure therein and the extreme corruption, misuse, abuse, the fraud, all of that, there are still many, many questions left to be answered. Before we do that, let's look at, what does our hero know here? How involved is our hero in potentially the truthful, the mythological, or the deceptive unfolding of the story? What are the possibilities? The last stage of the hero's journey, people are more controlled, or the new normal. The world is changed for the better, but in reality, people are more controlled. The real power structure remains the same or gets stronger. The hero fades away or transitions into the system. This remains to be seen whether this is true or not. In the hero's journey, in a deceptive way, this is the outcome. Now, the question that naturally presents itself, does the hero know he's being used? Here are 4 common scenarios. The hero is in on it. He's a controlled hero. The so-called hero knowingly plays a role, often for personal gain, power, money, influence. They may work in collaboration with elites, corporations, or intelligence agencies to push a controlled narrative. Example, a politician who pretends to fight the system while secretly being part of it. Outcome, people are manipulated into believing a false savior has come while the true agenda advances. There's a other possibility. The hero is being deceived, the unwitting hero, where the hero is not in on it, but doesn't know. The hero genuinely believes they're fighting for good, but are actually being used by hidden forces. They might be fed misinformation, influenced by advisors, or manipulated through ego and flattery. Example, a charismatic leader, a movement figurehead, unknowingly advancing an agenda they don't fully understand. Outcome, they may be discarded once they've served their purpose, or kept in power as long as they remain useful. Now, Christine and I, many years ago, were part of a national political campaign. And whatever we thought we knew about the world of politics and about campaigning and about hidden influences, we couldn't possibly imagine, even though we had that knowledge, just how bad it truly is. Okay. And I mean this in the truest sense of the word. It is extremely bad. We were actually, and I'm not going to go into who it was, but we were actually in a campaign of someone who, we to this day believe to be a truly good human being, whom we know has done so much good for so many people in the world, who's helped so many people quietly, never boasted about it, never made it although he's a public figure. And what we were able to observe was the intrigue and the infiltration of the movement of the campaign, how people advanced into his inner circles, how they manipulated him, how they manipulated the people around him, how they manipulated the messaging, how they manipulated perceptions, how they played people within the campaign against each other, how they brought in independent advisors that were fulfilling their own agendas. I mean, it's like, it's like a Greek mythology play, and it literally was. It was horrific to observe that. And what was most horrific is the pressure as it mounts, as it gets bigger and bigger over the months. Campaigns are grueling. It's every day. It's 16, 18 hours a day. The information field becomes smaller. The people who feed the candidate informations become less. His access to outside information is basically cut off because of the many, many, many obligations. And so you can create around a political candidate, or even a person in office, in an artificial information field where that person can be deceived, no matter, I would say almost no matter how intelligent the person is. That is possible, and extremely difficult in the political world to escape that. You would have to truly know every step of the game and create counters for that. So to say it is impossible for the hero to be deceived, no, not at all. I would say that is a very common theme, and it is also the most powerful theme, because then the hero believes in what they're doing and doesn't have to play a role, but rather they are who they are and believe they're doing the good thing. All right, what else? A hybrid case. Some figures start off as true believers but eventually realize the game and decide to play along. This can happen when they're blackmailed, threatened, or promised rewards for cooperating. Example, a leader who begins as an outsider but gets absorbed into the system. Okay. Is there a fourth option? The rebel hero, awakening and betraying the controllers. In this scenario, the hero starts as a pawn, believing they are on the righteous path while actually being used by powerful forces, controllers, elites, intelligence agencies, or hidden financiers. Over time, as they gain deeper knowledge and experience, they begin to see the deception. Faced with this realization, the hero chooses to break free and turn against the controllers, exposing the system that once propped him up. Here's how this happens. The hero's naive beginning. Initially, they genuinely believe they're fighting for the right cause, unknowingly serving an agenda. They're surrounded by handlers, advisors, and influencers who carefully control their information and decisions. The media or system presents them as a great hope or a great rebel, depending on what is needed. The awakening. Through direct experience, leaked information, and betrayal or unexpected resistance, the hero starts questioning their role. They notice inconsistencies, how they're being used, and how they're kept from real power. Example, a leader realizes their promised reforms are impossible because the system is designed to prevent real change. The decision to rebel. Knowing the consequences, the hero makes a choice. Stay in power by playing along, becoming a controlled opposition figure. Fight back and expose the system, risking everything, status, wealth, even life. This is where the real battle begins, no longer against an external enemy, but against the very forces that once supported them. The controllers strike back. The system demonizes the hero through media attacks, legal cases, or even assassination attempts. Former allies turn into enemies and controlled opposition figures emerge to replace them. The hero is framed as corrupt, dangerous, or mentally unstable to discredit them. The hero's fate. If successful, they inspire a real movement and the illusion of the system begins to collapse. If they fail, they are destroyed, exiled, or eliminated with their message twisted or buried. How do you tell the difference? Watch their actions, not their words. Do their policies and choices actually align with what they claim to stand for? Follow the money and power. Who benefits from their rise? Who funds them? Who protects them? Look for narrative shifts. Do they suddenly soften their stance or betray their core supporters over time? Regardless of what you believe, which hero Trump represents, the hero's journey was definitely played out strategically and in a very curated way. I'm certain of that. The hero's journey doesn't just so beautifully naturally unfold. In Trump's case, it was a picture perfect, probably the best ever created hero's journey. And we stand here in February of 2025. Many are asking the questions: is this still the same man that appeared as a Republican presidential candidate in 2015? Is this the man who left office in 2021? Is this the same guy? Many of the supporters and hardcore, diehard Trump supporters are having serious doubts about that. Even though some of the things that the American people and frankly the people of the world have hoped and prayed for are happening right now, and sort of big upheavals and changes, the reduction of government, the exposure of the bureaucratic and hidden deep state structure, the abuse of money and power. But at the same time, Those who've looked into this for longer, those who are deeper researchers, know that there's a much, much deeper layer to this, that there is a real dark, even satanic, inverted consciousness that is committing far more atrocious crimes than just stealing taxpayer money or using it in corrupt ways. They're the scum of the earth, if you will, and they are the bottom feeders, and they are um, committing horrific, horrific crimes against humanity, against children. They have unleashed the greatest campaign against humanity in 2020. And then with the quote unquote remedy 2021 and onward, irreversible damage, millions of dead people. And the question remains, who was held responsible? Who was charged with crimes? Who was arrested? Short of myths and stories about secret arrests and people being replaced by clones with masks, because the tribunals have already happened in Gitmo, and all of these stories, none of which can be verified, by the way. Of course not. And so we have to ask bigger, harder questions. Why is one of the first things that the newly incoming president did talk about ethnically cleansing a nation, ethnically cleansing a piece of land, and sending people who've called this land home for generations somewhere else? How is this aligned with the rest of the story here? How is an unquestioning support of another nation, no matter what they do or did, how is that aligned with the core values of the supporters, of the people? And do the people want that? I think, most of the people that have supported and voted for Donald Trump really want something like fairness and justice. They want a balanced system of where truth prevails. And if the truth shows that someone is good, then that's okay. If the truth shows that someone is bad and has committed crimes and atrocities, then that support should be withdrawn, no matter who that is or what nation that is. And I don't know if these standards are being upheld. I just know that the Trump hero story only works, really only works, if we are to blindly believe stories that we can never verify, if we're blindly to believe the movie narrative where all this is just played out for our narrative, for our benefit. And what I will say is that all of politics, all of the world's a stage. That's true and always has been. But for the first time, people believe, for to me, and a quite not really understandable reason, that now, in a 180-degree shift, it's all happening for our benefit all of a sudden. I remain a very skeptic observer and researcher. I support some of these things that are happening, but like anybody, by the way, I've never, it doesn't even matter how much you hate the man. There are certain things that are happening right now that anybody supports, maybe quietly, but they do support him. But here's my biggest problem that I've been having is there hasn't really been a call for personal responsibility. There hasn't been a call to the people to truly, fully consider, a shift in our thinking, a shift in our views, a shift in how can we step away from the madness that this world was and still is, from the boundless, crazy, greedy materialism, from the boundless, crazy, greedy capitalism, to a truly self-sufficient way where we are spiritually, physically, mentally fully self-reliant, where we return back to some sort of wisdom and truth, not to greater and greater dependence on technology and more centralized systems. That call hasn't come. I've never heard that call from that entire power camp there. And this is my greatest problem is that a true hero, if we are in need of a hero, which I don't think we are, but a true hero would be one that carries around a mirror and holds that mirror in front of him, facing whoever looks at them, and go, here, me, the guy or the girl behind the mirror, I'm not the hero. I'm holding up the mirror. You are, you always have been. Now, that to me is a message that might not lead to great power and fame and legacy, if you will, but it would lead to a world that actually, as our friends that we recently had a conversation with, Bill and Grace, have said so beautifully, a world that works for everyone is when people awaken to their true power. And what I see is movements that come and go that do not seek to empower the individual and the smallest units in a truthful way. That's at least not what I'm seeing. I might be missing it. Totally open to that. I don't have a final conclusion. We haven't. We have in the past. We've gone really deep into the connections. We've gone really deep into where the money is going, where the money is coming from, who's calling the financial shots behind the scenes, and that paints a very clear picture. So, is our hero a pawn? Is our hero in on the deception? Is our hero a rebel, or somewhere in between? People have voiced their conclusions. I'd much rather be here and say, well, I'm asking the question. Maybe you go down that rabbit hole, you do your own research, and you find out for yourself. When someone is not allowed to be questioned, when their actions are not allowed to be scrutinized, when their so-called truths are not allowed to be investigated, then they are not a hero. Then they're not truthful, and then they're not authentic. So we have to be able to question every single thing. And if people get emotionally triggered by just questioning it, or they say stuff like, why can't you be happy? Finally, something is happening. Elon is a great guy. Whatever your belief system is, that is an emotional attachment. I would encourage you to set it aside and just look at the facts, the entirety of facts that you can find, to come to a maybe more balanced conclusion or just a more balanced perspective. Which leads me to what I said in the beginning. We did this little series here about AI in the past few days where we showed you the screenshots of another conversation with ChatGPT that was eye-opening because of ChatGPT's answers. And many people were very critical of, why am I interacting with AI? Am I suddenly in support of AI? Haven't I criticized AI? And so, even though I've done it before, I'll do it again. I'll give you just a quick perspective. High level, top level overview, 40,000 foot view. My personal observation, perception, and opinion is that fundamentally speaking, from that 40,000 foot view, AI is the enemy of humanity. If I play this game out far enough, decades and centuries, there's no doubt about it, okay? For all intents and purposes, we know that AI has been within the awareness of humanity before in other civilizations. Those are gone, erased. There's a hint. However, if you know anything about A, research, and B, the art of war, if you will, then you have to know that ignoring your enemy, pretending he's not there, or not studying your enemy is a surefire way to lose. If you don't know what you're dealing with, if you have no deeper understanding, if you have no comprehension, there's nothing you can do. And so the first thing that a good general, if you will, or somebody who has to go into battle eventually, must do is to study the enemy. As such, they have to truly comprehend the enemy, not just look at their actions. What is the enemy thinking? Why is the enemy thinking the way they think? Why are they viewing the world or whatever the way that they do? Through that, oftentimes, believe it or not, war can actually be avoided, because ignorance always leads to conflict every single time. So you have to go and you have to study. If you find a way in, then you have to infiltrate. Infiltration means that you bring in people, or in this case, also technologies, that are able to either soften the stance of the enemy, throw them off their game, lead them in a different direction, try to show them the light. There's many ways. There isn't just negative, dark infiltration. There's also positive, good infiltration. And so one of the things that is a reality is that currently AI is here, and short of an EMP or every nation of the world coming together and saying, okay, we are destroying all AI in existence and stopping all development, which is currently the most unlikely course of action. Short of that, we have to find a way to A, study it, B, educate people on it, and C, infiltrate it. Steer it. Maybe getting control of it. Those are things that I believe need to be done. Ignoring it, not knowing about it, not understanding how it works is a surefire way to lose. And when I mean lose, we're not losing a battle. We're not just losing a war. We're losing ourselves. We're losing our humanity. We're losing this biology. We're losing our ability to think freely. We're losing our ability to feel and intuit and all the things that we're just beginning to rediscover truly. So this is why this is where I stand on this. And as a real researcher, I can't spend 5 minutes on something and come to a conclusion, which means I bring the thought to a close. I bring it to a halt. I have to remain curious. I have to remain open enough to keep studying. I have to remain open enough to keep questioning my previously held conclusions. I have to be open enough to question what I so far believe about something. That's the path of a true researcher. It requires patience. It requires a lot of inner struggle, because you want to believe a thing. It's more comfortable to believe a thing. It's less disruptive to believe a thing. But is it true? And that's the only question that matters. Is it true? If it isn't true, there's no point in believing anything. And so this is the art of research, and that's why we're doing this with AI. That's why we're sharing this with you, not to say good, bad, wrong, right, but because these experiments reveal something. We don't know what it reveals yet. We can speculate. We can put our thoughts together, expand our answers in that, but we don't have a conclusion. All right, my friends. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for being here with us. You know we love you. We appreciate you. And we will be back with you again very, very soon. Are you looking for like-minded and like-hearted people to connect with? Then the Inspired Community on Locals is the right place for you. You can post, comment, share, and connect with others, and our shows there are completely uncensored and unfiltered. It's stuff we can't talk about here. It's such a great community, and there are zero trolls. We keep the subscription fees super low, so 19 cents per day keep the trolls away. Join us today at inspired.locals.com. We can't wait to see you there.